Or people, we'll just wait for Carol and Graham. Do, 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 do. To this class today, I am Mel Rogers, and I help with the adult faith formation group, and some of you are on that. And if you're not on that, we would love you to be on that. So talk with Sid Smith afterwards. She's our chair. And I'm here to introduce our former chair of adult faith formation, Jane Dutton. Many of you know her. Most of you know her. She taught in the Ross Business School for many, many years. Were you at Dartmouth before that? No, NYU. But did you meet her at Dartmouth? No. At Northwestern. Okay. I know you got your PhD from Northwestern. She focuses on compassion in the workplace, environment, positivity, things like that. I won't go into all of her bio, but she's extraordinary. And we've been very fortunate to have her both in our church and on our session. Her husband, Lance Sandilands, is back there as well. He's also retired now from the Ross Business School. But Jane, as you know her, is just a lightning bug of joy, and she helps keep our focus on things that are really important and really matter, and things that you might not have noticed around this church. And so she's here to talk about one of those things that happened this year, the Warming Center. And I'll let her talk about more how she got into this, but she's keeping it before us so that we can continue to see what God is doing in our midst. Jane Dutton.
Great. Thank you.
I think you on. Yeah. All right. Well, I am very excited to be here. Welcome to the people. I hope there's some folks online. Hello. Really glad you're here. And it's such a joy. I've been so excited about this. And Bill Hall has been just a gem in helping me. You'll see there's lots of videos and little video clips that took a lot of time to figure out exactly how to do it and put them together. So I'm very grateful to Bill. But I'm really excited about being here. And I really have multiple goals. But I do have to say, given Mel's introduction, so I was a professor for 40 years, so that way of doing this is in my bones. So I am going to invite you to participate. So it may provide a little bit of a challenge with the mic, because we want to use the mic so that people online can hear it, but also so it can be recorded. But let me start with just some goals. Involved in seeing him many times through doing adult faith formation. He said, perfect, this is faith in action, and so I'll help. And so he's helped me earlier in the morning. 3 o'clock in the morning, he actually was sending me the link for this final presentation. So he has really been a god's Is for the church, but think about a family gathering that you might have, or a meeting or a committee that you're part of. The framework that I'm going to suggest for you applies to anytime people come together, and you want to design it so that it's more life-giving for the people who are part of it. Okay. So as you listen to this, and we're going to listen to some videos, but also some of you are participating as volunteers in the warming center, so your stories will be welcome as well. What surprises you? What do you want most to remember? Kolb, who's probably the top person on how do people learn from experience. And the key part of this is this idea of reflective observation. So think about all the experiences that you've had as a member of this church, but how probably few times you actually have time to pause, think about it, and reflect on it. And so So the second assumption is that experiences unlock resources that increase, keep the same, or actually, probably in many experiences you've had, it's actually been depleting of, these key human-based resources. Committee, or any sort of group, but what it does for the whole. And so I would argue, and again, 40 years of studying this stuff in organizations, that actually there is a way to influence an organization's capacity and its capability for effective action. So my argument is, if we can have more experiences like this, it's actually going to do those good things. On each one of these little angles, in this triangle. So I'm just going to assert this for you, that if you design experiences where people have exposure to positive emotions, and those are just, pleasant feelings attached to the experience that can be like bold ones, like joy, like we talked about today, but it also can be really simple things like comfort, or energy, or gratitude. What does it mean for the meaning of the group, like the Mission and Justice Committee or the staff? What does it mean for how people interpret or make meaning of the whole church? And then finally, positive connections. So those are because you're going to help me here in the videos what positive emotions come up, what positive meanings come up, what positive connections come up. Okay, we're going to, okay, same. Uh-oh, we did the video. We did the...
Warming Center came about. Yeah, it really was unexpected. So around the beginning of November, they approached Mark and said, they were supposed to, sorry, I'm not explaining this well, but around the beginning of November, they approached Mark because they had a church lined up to host for the month of December that then had to cancel. And so all of a sudden they had 4 weeks where they were unable to find anyone to host. And so they asked if we could host for 2 of those weeks. And this was the Shelter Association of Washtenaw County, and then also Mission, which is the organization that mostly funds the Warming Center. And so first Mark brought it to local Mission work group, and then we met with another group from Mission to talk about, is this viable, right? Like, is this something we could do? What would this involve? And then there were a lot more meetings, but in the end, as there always are, but to make a long story, rather the boring part of the story short anyways, it was approved by session. And then a task force started meeting. We met with the staff members. We had a lot of conversations about how do we use this space for this purpose in ways that create a healthy and safe environment for our guests, and that also are good stewards of the space for all the other people and events who use this space. So it definitely was a big process there, and a lot of trying to figure out, with Justice as Never having done this before, what do we need from volunteers? What do we need for donations? But the pieces eventually fell into place, and it worked. It did work.
Sorry to interrupt, but this is important.
Any impact on the church? Do you think there'll be things that are lasting?
Yes, absolutely. So there's a couple of things that come to mind. The first is I always am trying to think of how to create space for others to encounter different perspectives. And I think for those who are volunteering, just based on some of the conversations I had and what I observed, was perhaps some slight shifting of assumptions.
Yeah.
And
can you say more about that?
yeah, I'll talk about one thing. One of the dynamics, we heard there was a lot of prep work into making this happen, right? And one of the things we heard from other places that host a warming center was it can get loud. In my mind, I'm just like, oh, it's just loud because there's different people and things coming and going. But I think some of what they were referring to was, there can be some tensions and it can rise. And sometimes it felt like one of my jobs over the couple weeks was to be just a non-anxious pastoral presence to our staff and volunteers, because it could get loud. There could be some tensions, and one of the ways I tried to describe it was like, have you ever had to crash out? Like, at least for me, like I remember, I'm gonna tell you this is unrelated, but we had a staff party. I made some cream corn, and I was so excited. I had a pot full. We're driving in. I turned the corner off Washtenaw.
Oh, no.
And it went all over my car.
Oh,
and
no.
I might have screamed a moment, right? Like I was so mad, and I was like, why couldn't I have taken that slower? Like it would have been fine. But I could do that in my car by myself, and I compose myself, and I come back into church, right? I go back out and clean it, but folks who are unhoused don't really have a space, right? You know, and so sometimes things up. If you think of all the stressors that somebody who doesn't have a place to go to might have, you know, there's going to be things that flare up and things, because that happens in our daily lives for those who do have the privilege of having a house and don't need to worry about that. I mean, the last day I was here, Friday, I was sitting there thinking, you know, we kind of had to. They kind of had to say, "All right, we're closed," and I was like, it was at that moment where I was like, "Oh man, like, if I had to figure out where I was going to go because I didn't have any place to go, how incredibly hard that is."
Yeah.
So, some of what I saw from our volunteers was just the shifting of understanding of, like, you know, this, it may be a little uncomfortable,
Right.
but it doesn't mean somebody is dangerous.
Yeah.
And I think there's a shift and perhaps some dignity in kind of understanding that and recognizing that, you know, there's a lot of stressors and things happening. There's some other stuff, mental health stuff, and, but all of us sort of have those too, and have those moments.
Yeah. So are there certain stories or examples of?
Well, I'll tell you.
episodes?
Here's another story that kind of relates to the example of shifting perspectives. There's a gentleman. Let's say his name is Rabbit for the sake of. Yeah, and there's been some stuff said about him. He's a gentleman who's used our space before, outside our grounds, I should say, as a shelter. And somebody, I remember him coming in. He brought an extra jacket he had and said, "Hey, could you use this?" And Pat's like, "Yeah, I'll wash it and we'll take it." And anyways, and one of the volunteers observed all of this. That we saw us interacting. He said, "Hey, Pastor Mark," we're talking, and a little while later, when he left, one of the folks who was volunteering was like, "I met Rabbit. Like, he was so nice. Like, I just in my mind had heard some stories of him and thought he's like a mean, gruff guy, and he's anything but." And so it was just a little thing of seeing somebody. Like, unless you encounter folks, unless you enter into someone's space or where they are, to meet them where they are, it's hard to then really truly know them, And it's a little thing, but.
But no, it's actually a big little thing.
Yeah.
I think that something that comes to my mind is that there was one day, it was maybe one of the first few days, and I was just hanging out, in the Welcome Center with folks and talking, and guests were coming in, and the smell of marijuana sort of enveloped our welcome desk, and I sort of chuckled, and people, uh, I don't know, no one sort of knew how to react at first, like, ah, marijuana, wait, what, how do we feel about this? And then, sort of at once, we realized, oh, this is real life. This is what it looks like to open our doors and encounter Christ and encounter sort of what's outside of this little bubble that we're used to and what we're comfortable with. And, I think that it, was a funny reminder and a sweet reminder and a reminder that sort of kept popping up throughout the week that, this is real life. This is Jesus that we're encountering. This is the other, and, what a privilege that we were able to do that.
About what you saw, yeah.
Well, I'm not sure this is an emotion or if it is a positive one, but I see a recurring theme of our insistence on controlling environments being challenged, that we want environments that are clean and tidy in our Presbyterian way too, and in good order, and we don't like messiness. And so I think that this recognition that, well, life can be messy and it's not going to always be, and we know that,
right.
But especially in our church environment, that we want it to be in control in a certain way. And so I think this challenged some of those assumptions and opened people's eyes that, yes, life is messy and we can embrace that even in our church environment, which we know, but I think the reality of it forced us to adjust some of that thinking.
Yeah. Any other before we move? I think that points to, Jim, one of the key resources that is unlocked from this is knowledge, is, just enhanced understanding and enhanced knowledge of, I thought in your example, knowledge of ourselves as well as knowledge of the community. Okay, so now let's see what Sarah.
Heard from one of our guests who I had talked to and prayed with before, ended up going to the hospital in an ambulance one day because she was having trouble breathing. And so we were very worried about her and prayed for her. And then the next day, I'm standing in the hallway with Pat, and this guest walked in and she's feeling so much better, and they gave her some medicine and got her hydrated again. And, the shelter cessation staff and our volunteer meetings, we talked about, it's really important you never touch someone without permission. Like, you never initiate any contact because you don't know what they're comfortable with or what's going to be triggering for them, especially with women who may have a lot of trauma from past physical assault experiences. But Pat standing there, just sort of opens up her arms and a gesture of, "We're so glad to see you." And the guest walks over and just gives Pat a hug. And just that guest felt like she was being welcomed and celebrated, that we were so glad she was feeling better. And that she wanted to hug Pat, who has been such a friend to all of our guests. It was just really special to witness.
Yeah, that's gorgeous. I just have to build on that. So I was only there for the 4 hours yesterday, and so many people came in and said, "Where's Pat?" So many of the guests, where is she? When's she coming in? So she did represent, I feel like, the love and hospitality in the Welcome Center, which was lovely.
She did. Pat was amazing, and she really did think of them as like her children and grandchildren, which I'm sure she told you about. But just getting to hang out with Pat the past 2 weeks and see her was so wonderful, and it was a lot for her, just physically being at the church for that many hours, since she is, after all, well retired and supposedly works part-time. But she was there almost every hour the warming center was open, except for Friday mornings. And her children, she told us that her children kept calling her because they were worried about her and thought she was doing too much. And she's like, "Well, they should understand that I just can't stop." And Mark suggested, "Well, you don't really need to be there on Friday if you stay home and rest." And she's like, "Of course I have to be there on Friday. I have to say goodbye to my friends." And it was just the most, and I feel like you could see that in a patronizing light, but with Pat it wasn't, right? Because they were her friends, and these are people she really loves. And folks would greet her and knew her by name when they would ask her for bus tokens. And even like I was hanging around the front desk once, and this man came up and wanted to show Pat his deposit slip because apparently he had told her he got this job, and then he showed her his first paycheck, but he had issues with gambling in the past, and she'd been like, you need to make sure you deposit that and don't spend it on gambling. And so we wanted to show her that he deposited it. You know, and just seeing that the relationships that, 2 weeks is such a short time, especially 2 weeks during business hours, and, volunteers come in and out, right? It was always different volunteers. But just seeing the relationships that some of our folks built in that 2 weeks was really special to witness.
This is definitely the set of clips that are talking about the effects of the staff saw on the volunteers. How about this one? What additional did you see?
The love and the kindness and the gratefulness and the graciousness, of everybody in that story.
Yeah.
I also think one of the emotions, or two, if I can remember them in my head now, is the importance of being a peaceful presence.
Yeah.
I know I need that, and that's a strength that my friends have for me. So just to learn to just be a calm and be present is a strong change, I guess, or transformation for me with people who need us to be there and to listen. Yeah. That's.
Any others?
A lot of time, people that are homeless, they're sort of invisible. People look the other way, and we ignore them as we're walking by. We're afraid or for whatever reason. And I think coming to this warming center and seeing the love and graciousness of the people that were volunteering really meant a lot to them. And, human connection.
Yeah, no, and that positive connection.
Yes.
What you see, I think, in all of this is the positive connections with the unhoused or in the process, but also the positive connection between the staff and volunteers. Because they're seeing them with new eyes or with different eyes than they had in maybe previously.
Right.
Yeah, beautiful. Go ahead.
I think that also it's these reflections make kind of give a place for the recognition of the mutuality of the experience. Mm-hmm. That is, it shifts the positions from the church members and volunteers and staff as being the beneficent givers of something to the unhoused who are in need, to the needy. Mm-hmm. And it's just as clear that the staff and volunteers are needy of knowledge themselves. So the gift is a gift that's a mutual gift, gift giving. Mm-hmm. Those stories capture that.
Which, once you have that mutuality, you're actually changing the form of the connection between them. So it's less this and more even. Yes, which again, if you sort of think about that, and you think about, again, the Mission and Justice Committee, and this increased understanding of seeing the mutual interdependence of each other, and the fact that they can both give to each other, that then the next experience that you go into, people have a different sort of mindset and are acting in different kinds of ways. Yeah, I love these observations. We've got lots of videos, so I want to. Now I'm not sure. This we may have mixed these up. So this one is. any impact on the church? Do you think there'll be things that are lasting?
Yes, absolutely. So there's a couple of things that come to mind. The first is I always am trying to think of how to create space for others to encounter different perspectives. And I think if for those
And Mark too, but listening to the wisdom and the honesty and the authenticity of people talking about this experience was very uplifting and meaningful to me. So let's go to reflections from And Nibs played a huge role, everyone knows, in the warming center. She didn't want to be videoed, but we caught her in the early conversation with Andy. So when we start out here, you're going to hear
to talk when we were sitting down and having lunch with people. I really found it hard to know what to say.
Yeah.
So I asked the one gentleman, Don, if I said, where do you stay at night? Because I was concerned. He says, I just stay in my car. Yeah, I just stay in my car. And I didn't know what to say to that.
Right.
Of course, what I wanted to say was, well, I have an empty bedroom. Come stay with me. But I knew that would never be the thing to do. But yeah, I felt like stay in your car. It's got to be freezing, right?
Yeah.
Well, the questions I wanted to ask him was kind of, you have to be very careful because some people have some mental issues and others just the stress of the life is an issue in itself. But, to ask them, and a couple told me, one guy came up and told me, he said, this is the first time I've ever been homeless.
Yeah.
He said, I worked all my life.
Yeah.
Oh.
And and others, you talk to a lot of the people and they're well-spoken.
Yeah.
They've gone to college, and you look at some of these people, and you just, you don't want to ask them what happened. And I kind of thought, and almost the term I was thinking of on my own when I was just kind of thinking about it driving was, maybe the term I would refer to it as said, so I know you're down on your luck right now. That would be I wouldn't want to say you're homeless. But say that used to be the term long ago was I'm down on my luck. How long have you been down on luck? And what does it take to help you to get back? And the other thing I started telling them this week is I said I've enjoyed talking to you the last couple of weeks, but I hope I don't see you here next time.
Yeah, that's what we said to Augustine.
Yeah.
We hope we don't see you, because he's a really nice guy, and he said, you'll see me next year. And I said, I hope we don't see you next year.
We hope we don't see you.
He said, well, I'm getting housed in January, and I'm going to help be a volunteer for the warming shelter next year, so you will see me. That's what he said.
But in a different role.
In a different role.
Right.
Yeah. And he was the first person to introduce himself to me when I first got there Monday morning, Augustine.
Right.
Yeah.
Yep. And even our gal that was a little challenging that talked the last couple of days because she saw me around. Yesterday she was scavenging around looking. I said, "Which kind of chips are you looking for?"
Doritos.
And I went and found them. And
Doritos,
and previously, I would ask her questions. Can I help you or something? And she just wouldn't say anything. And then finally she started telling me what you want. I said, I'd like to get you what you want. Tell me what we can do for you. Yeah. And all of a sudden she kind of opened up and talked to us, and I like to think maybe we were positively influencing her because she wasn't.
well, we saw her as a person, right?
We saw her as a person, but she wasn't as triggered as she was last week. She had a lot of, so she seemed to de-escalate a little bit, so that was good.
Yeah. Yeah.
So one thing I noticed there with Andy in particular, people have different feelings about whether grief is a positive emotion, but you certainly saw grief coming through, and if that word doesn't sound positive to you, there was a place of trust where he could show the great grief that I think all of us carry about the issues going on in our world and how people are hurting. So that was very positive. That space for him to be able to show the feelings.
Yeah. I think there was empathy. I mean, empathy and compassion, which are also both emotions that is going to, again, it's happening in the immediate, but it's a resource that people can draw on in the future as well. How do you think they thought about themselves differently from participating? Think about Andy and Diane. I know Diane's done a lot of this, but I think Andy was in the kitchen, I think, most of the time. And then this was one of his first experiences. So how do you think, again, self-meaning, if you think about how they might change or for those of you who participated, were there changes in how you thought about who you were, sort of based on that experience? Yeah.
I don't know if this is pertaining to the question you
Oh,
just
it's okay.
asked, but,
Students never pay attention to the relationship to the...
what can I say? But I found great the hope in the young man that, that said that he was getting a home, and that he would come back to volunteer next year. That is great hope for his own future and looking forward to his own future.
Yeah.
I like that.
Yeah, I think so too. Okay. Okay.
I think in hearing some of the stories from the guests, you begin to realize that the distance between you and they is a lot less than you thought it was, and that's revealing.
Yeah, well, and I'll just, again, I can't help but, for me, that's very much a positive meaning, seeing yourself as part of humanity, where it's a collective, there go you, there go I. Just the seeing it as a thou too, not just as a certain kind of dignity and sacredness in the other. Did you want to say, Sid?
Just a comment about that was very moving. To me, is that sense of how it's very difficult to do good. And I'm thinking about Anne talking about what are the words to say something to somebody that would be helpful for them.
Right.
My vocabulary of words of how I want to do good are inadequate for this complex, environment that we're all in here.
Right.
And so that the need to back up and try and find a new kind of vocabulary for exchange and communication and connection.
I want to just add to that you asked about self-meaning, and you saw in both of heard with Diane, but saw in Andy, on exactly that point, that part of the self-meaning was that he dived into what are his own resources. What is a language that I have heard that I can use here? So there was this real growth in understanding that there was something in there he could draw on, even though it didn't pop up at the surface.
When it was making me think about in the design of these experiences, where you're going out and doing good, that the importance of coming back and sharing the learning and trying to so it's not just up to you to figure out the right language and a language you're comfortable, but you do it in community with others. So again, I think reflections on these experiences not only help you understand that experience, but help you in the design for the future. Well, here's Pat.
Helping them, but we were kind of helping ourselves. And I think I saw it happen, and think it happened in my situation as well. We were kind of like the Grinch. Our hearts grew 3 sizes.
Oh, I think that's an excellent way to put it.
That's how you saw that happen. And I think that we were doing things for somebody else, but then the feedback that you get just makes your heart just blow up. It's so wonderful. Yeah.
Well, you had talked about a little bit about felt like a pilgrimage.
It did.
So can you talk about that?
I said that it felt like a pilgrimage where we didn't go anywhere. It was a stay pilgrimage. That we were just so closely working together. Diane and Sarah and this Diane and Andy. I mean, all of us. You kind of felt like we were sort of in this really together, and we saw each other every day, and it was just. It's an experience that was very much ours and very full and included us and was so different. And I think we'll respond to each other in a different way.
Pilgrimage, a stay pilgrimage, and that was a really powerful concept. I'm going to keep going and give you some more food for thought, because these are really good, and there's...
Part of what this warm welcome and offering a safe environment was trying to do both, and when people feel equipped with the power of hello and observation and communication and sort of this sense of team, then you behave differently. It's not sort of this sense of worry. You're able to lean in a little bit, and I felt like that too. We were advised to really sort of step back. The shelter, team has the expertise, and we are just here to offer this space. Right. That very quickly changed when I was greeted warmly by the guests who were coming in, right. and the initiation to engage with us. All of a sudden, I wasn't making them feel comfortable, they were making me feel comfortable. And so this community formed from, I was there on Monday, the very first day. I've been here, I've come back every single day. I've felt compelled, and I was watching the people on mission who are on really frontline people, who have done a lot of mission work face to face, which I have not. I've had the opportunity to write a check or support the organization who's helping the people. This has given me, I've watched the Dons and Dianes, you guys, and I've learned how wonderful it is to be in direct conversation with the people who we want to be in conversation with.
To be engaged with, and in fact, what I would say, I just joined the mission committee a few months ago, and it was one thing to sit in a committee room and talk about doing stuff. Yeah. This was awesome because we were actually doing stuff.
We were doing it.
Any comments? Any things you want to just call out?
Very quick collaboration started to form, and that was really thrilling for everybody. So we had more conversation with the guests, we had more conversation with the shelter people, and we ended up taking a field trip one day, 14 people in a van, and everybody got the fair deal cards, which gives them a half price. And you'll see the lanyards and the cards that they have, and did you already talk about what it really means?
I was starting to talk about it.
Yeah,
I said that I learned so much about bus travel and what it means to our friends on the street. This little token is worth $1.50, but so much more than money, it's worth dignity. It's worth agency. It can get folks to from point A to point B quickly. They doctor's appointments, jobs. I never thought about all of this. And if you have to walk, and you're having mobility issues, because I understand mobility issues. But yeah, so that was something. The second day, one of the guests said to me, well, the other churches have bus tokens. So I called Brent that night and said, can we somehow get bus tokens? I said, I'm happy to go get them if we can get them. He said, oh, absolutely, go get them. So when I came in the morning, I said to Sarah, I'll go, we can do this. And she said, oh, can I go, because I want to get out of the building for a minute and just get some fresh air. And it turned out that was meant to be, because now Sarah has a relationship with the person who works on South Industrial, and she was a formerly homeless person. And she was so adamant about getting us in a position of getting the right forms, knowing what to do, facilitating, getting everybody out there and making sure that it worked, that she became a partner in this project.
Wow. Yeah, so AATA, right? Yeah.
Yeah, and then, and when they came back, our friends were just joyful, and everybody stopped and showed me their card. And then I didn't tell you this, but just yesterday, we have a family that's staying with us that have 3 children. One is in a stroller, and they've had a rough couple of weeks, and they've had some unhappy issues around transportation and being refused bus travel. But and they weren't able to go on the field trip because their baby wound up with pneumonia, and anyway. But she came in yesterday just literally hopping by the desk to show me that she got a Fair Deal card. Yeah. And then today, her husband got the Fair Deal card. So now they have this Fair Deal card. But anyway, when she came in yesterday, I was preparing the large print Christmas Eve bulletins. And she said, oh, I'm sure you have Christmas Eve services. They're coming to church on Christmas Eve, this whole family.
Wonderful.
So, I mean, this is, again, as an organizational person, I just get so excited about this. That just this is a whole improvised kind of thing where they detected a need, that they needed to get these lanyards. It was really hard to do. They rented a van, took 14 people over so that they could all get this special parking ticket. And then you'll hear later, I don't have the clip of it, but now there's an attempt for the other churches and synagogues doing warming centers also having a mobile capacity for people to come and get people these transportation kind of things. So, again, this organization, the FBC, is sort of learning to improvise, and the sense of agency that people had, that's an emotion. So I feel agentic. I feel I have control. This was really hard. We solved this. And we not only solved it for us, but we've solved it for the future. It's just a sense of potency that is really may in the next experience, prompt people to take a risk, to say, well, what could we do around here? What could we do to solve this? Ooh, this is precious stuff for organizations, sort of in the well of, especially for volunteers, in this well of potential capacity to unleash it and just, put it to good use for especially for people outside the church. I'm actually going to jump to the next clip because I want to get some of the opportunities. We'll put this on.
The experience of having done this, like you said, that took so much preparation, and there were some bumps along the way, and yes, we did it. Do you think that this experience is going to change the church in any way?
I absolutely do.
So
I
say more
do.
about that.
You know, things are never easy in the beginning. And, you know, so much of what we were saying was that, you know, because we didn't have a whole year to prepare for this, you know, we didn't have everybody totally prepared the way we would want to, or have all the discussions we would want to have, you know, and we can sort of over communicate sometimes, or really like try to prepare overboard sometimes.
Manage the heck out of it.
Manage the heck out of it, exactly. And what was so sweet was that we couldn't really do that, and we had to jump in. We just had to jump in, and that is what, you know, ministry is about so much of the time. That's what mission is about, really meeting a need where it's at,
Right.
and, you know, doing what needs to be done. And I think that is such a beautiful, you know, thing that we got to do together.
Yeah.
You know, and we can see the downside of it and the things we weren't ready for, but looking back at it, I don't think that that's what people are thinking about.
Yeah.
You know, but it's that we were able to do it, and I think that it gives us a sense of confidence to be able to help people better in the future and get into, you know, our discomfort zone a little bit. We can reflect back and be like, you know what, we did that. We can do this too. You know, so
Yeah, I think you're right. I think that'll be one of the lasting imprints from this, and I really hope that, you know, you sharing your story and other people so generously sharing their stories, that it will help people remember.
That was a good one. So I'm just going to, these are all pretty short.
Church, from what you were able to witness.
I did. I felt like it was very energizing. Like, even though this was, objectively speaking, a lot of volunteer hours and a lot of, like, sign-up geniuses and bringing things, it did seem to have an energizing effect instead of a draining effect.
Yeah.
And so many people talked to me about how they were felt so connected to this, or how they had these questions about, like, how do folks receive mental health care if they don't have access to that via health insurance, or what are the options for this? And a lot of times I was like, well, I don't know, but that's a great question. Like, let's look into it. You know, I think especially seeing the bus pass, the bus tokens, and the fair deal card. I don't know how to describe that, like, character arc, like the arc of that story as it went from, you know, Diane Tamlin was on a community meeting, and then all of a sudden she's renting a 15-passenger van and taking folks to the transit office.
That was a great story. We got it recorded yesterday.
That's good. I was just in awe. Like, Diane said this to me, and I was like, wow, we're doing this. And then we did, right? And it happened, and she really brought that to fruition. And, like, has plans for the future. You know, like, this is not over. And just seeing things like that, so many things came out of it that were not part of the original commitment to the Warming Center, but that just sprang up from people encountering our guests at the Warming Center and encountering the problems of homelessness. And I think feeling really moved to act.
It's real short. It's actually cut off a little bit, but it's okay.
It's what we've been talking
Right.
a lot about.
Yeah.
Now I know what it sounds like and what it looks like and what it feels like out of our own home. This sense of this, we've talked about this place, you know, that is so
We've talked
sacred,
the talk,
right? And it really has sort of, I don't know, just transformed into, you don't have to talk about it, we're just doing it, you
Yeah.
know, in a way that really speaks for
Right.
itself. If you look
Other reflections about, again, the potential for the church.
I just wondered, what is the fair deal card compared to
Oh, it's just well, Sarah, you can explain it.
I'll try for a 2-sentence explanation. It's a discount card, so it is not a bus pass, but when you use it with a bus pass, it basically makes all bus travel half price. And you can be eligible to receive one if you are low income or meet some other requirements. You can get this card. It requires identification. It's only good for a year. It has to be renewed. So there's just a lot of obstacles to getting one and maintaining one. That was more than 2 sentences.
It's about relationship. I served on
Oh,
the...
sorry.
I served on the Dismantling Racism Committee, And the challenge we have is we go to meetings, we go to lectures, we go to conferences, you encounter somebody for a few minutes, but we don't have opportunities to build relationships. And in terms of communicating with people, are they looking for advice or do they want to be heard? And if you can just keep that in mind to listen, it's an amazing thing. And I'd like to make a plug for Friends Indeed's Circle program. Circles is an opportunity for people living in poverty to try to get out of poverty. They call them leaders. They commit to 2 years in this program. And Circles needs allies, people who are going to walk with these people for 18 months, just to listen, to be there, to support, and develop a relationship that goes beyond a warming center afternoon. Something we can be in each other's homes and develop a relationship with someone. Yes, I want to help or I want to know some of these people. I don't meet them except on the street for 2 minutes or something. And opportunities for us to develop relationships with people who are from a different economic level.
Right.
Across 23.
Yeah, thank you for.
Our community.
Thank you, Jeanette. I just want to mention the recording of the session 2 times ago that Jim and others did about the mission of the church, and where we had leaders from various nonprofits that were helping, is a fantastic session, and you can get it on our YouTube recording again for more opportunities, more sustained relationships with the outside organization and with individuals. Yeah, Lance.
This is dangerous for me to pick up the microphone.
I know.
When it's trying to have the last word. One of the things that really impresses me about this is the amount of hope. What a testimony about hope this is. That when we find ourselves in a condition of brokenness, I mean, meeting with the homeless people, that's brokenness itself. We're broken because we're unprepared, know how to deal with them, and so. But what happens is love and play rush into the brokenness, and then we have these resources, we have these possibilities that are truly beautiful, and the truth, beauty, and good are the things which are brought into being by this brokenness. And it's these sort of moments of being that we invite when we invite this brokenness into our lives and then have to cope with it, humanly speaking.
Yes. Yeah, I just want to encourage everyone to think about this as an instance. It's just one example of so many things that the church is doing. And pausing to sort of say, what did we learn from this experience? What kind of capacities and capabilities were created? And again, I feel like for a church for us to get to really unleash the potentiality of the church, we need more of this reflection and sort of conscious design of experiences, so that people can have more experiences of these generative conditions. And I thought I would just end by So you did not get the last word, Lance.
So I get the last word.
You get the last word.
So Sid and I had the fortunate time to be at a luncheon earlier this week. Met a woman whose head is something called ground cover news. In the category of how does that work? I've been ignoring most of these folks on the corners downtown. And ground cover news is a way to generate income for the homeless. The way it works, very briefly, is that they cost $2 for a copy of ground cover news. The person selling gets $1.50 of that and pays ground cover news 50 cents. So it generates income for the homeless, because they're the ones that are selling this. It's putting themselves right out in front. I've been ignoring that for years. I'm going to now start regularly buying ground cover news.
Yeah. Thank you for that pitch.
I just have a quick comment.
We got to give you the mic.
It's really good that we can obtain bus passes, but will the company really go broke if they were free?
Yeah, good question.
Are the buses going to suddenly become overcrowded? And it seems to me that we should really be making an effort to ensure that they're free.
Yes, we were encouraged after the last session. I actually contacted AATA, but to actually make the pitch to allow for free. Do you want to?
It's actually on the ground cover. Yes, there are some folks from this church who have contacted AATA, and you can as well, and let them know that we would like more bus pass access. I also wanted to add on to ground cover that a lot of our, not a lot, but I know of at least several of our warming shelter guests who write for ground cover and sell it regularly. And I actually saw one of the shelter staff persons who is also formerly homeless himself yesterday representing ground cover at an event. And he still writes for them. And he commented that the last week of the warming center was last week, and people had mentioned First Presbyterian and how nice it was to be hosted here. So
yeah.
I'll add that until about 5 years ago, First Presbyterian advertised in the ground cover news every month, and it was a part of our advertising budget, and it was considered a mission. I think that has, I think maybe it's dying. I'm not sure. I think maybe that has fallen off since Esther's taken over because she really doesn't know that we could be doing that, but that'd be something to raise with her. The other point I just want to make, Jane, about Pat's wonderful phrase for pilgrimage is that having done all these pilgrimages, I know a lot of times the same people want to go every time. And I feel like that's a little bit going to be what we encounter here, that the same people that did it this time are going to want to do it again because they've had these experiences that you're helping us to see. And we have to be intentional about bringing somebody new in with us. When we go to do this next year, whatever role we had, invite somebody to share it with us. Otherwise, it just stays as a siloed group of people that all feel good about what they're doing, but we're not really spreading it into the congregation, which is so important.
Yeah, great point. Yeah, the time is up, so I just want to close this to get some closure on an open-ended conversation about living radical hospitality, a Rumi poem that I just love. So this being human is a guest house. Every morning is a new arrival, a joy, a depression, a meanness. Some momentary awareness comes as an unexpected visitor. Welcome and entertain them all, even if they're a crowd of sorrows who violently sweep your house, empty of its furniture. Still, treat each guest honorably. She may be clearing you out for some new delight. The dark thought, the shame, the malice, meet them at the door laughing and invite them. Be grateful for whoever comes, because each has been sent as a guide from beyond. And so I just think that's so fitting for so many experiences. So thank you for the opportunity. Thank you to Hannah and Sarah and everybody else who allowed me to interview them.
Jane's idea, and she spent hours doing these
Thank you.
We want to thank you for giving positive meaning to us.
Oh, thank you. Thank you very much.
Bill and Bill, wow.
Yeah.
Thank you for sharing. You got it right.
Thank you, everybody. Do you want to say about next week? I don't know what.
Next week is Easter.
Oh, next week is Easter. That's right.
Do I want to say anything about it?
Thank you, everybody, for coming.